Hey guys, Tina here and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about some of the books that I want to reread because lately I have had this great urge to get back to some of my favorites, and I just want to share the whole list with you. I have actually done some rereading already this year because I reread Reread Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan, which is a fantasy series that I just adore. I read it a few years back, and because I'm actually reading the prequel series that's coming out now, I just wanted to get back to that world and see what the differences and the connections are, and I just had so much fun getting back immersed into that world that I just made a list of all the books that I want to do the same with. So here we go. The first are the Cosmere books by Brandon Sanderson. He's an epic fantasy author, and he has a bunch of epic fantasy books that are sort of interconnected into this world that's called the Cosmere. And while the connections are pretty loose right now, eventually they're supposed to be a lot more obvious and stronger and just more interesting to sort of, for readers to try to connect and all that. And the books that that are already out right now are Lantris, Warbreaker. There's the first Mistborn trilogy, or Mistborn Era 1, and there's also Mistborn Era 2, and there's a bunch more coming out later. There's also a few books out in the Stormlight Archive series, 3 so far. There's supposed to be 10 eventually. And I just love them all. I actually reread Elantris and Warbreaker last year, but I would like to do that again at some point and sort of get through all of them in a shorter span of time. I just really enjoy them, and I want to sort of reread them, especially the ones that I have not reread yet, just to see how my feelings and have changed regarding them. If they have, am I going to enjoy them more or less than the first time around? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to those. Then I would like to get back into the world of Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I have already read the first 4 books in this 14-book series, and then I sort of just stopped, not sure why exactly, probably life, because that's usually what gets me stumbling. But yeah, I really enjoyed the first 4 books. I have a review of them up here so you can go check it out, and I really love them. I mean, it's a more traditional type of fantasy with a chosen one that sort of realizes that he's in danger, or everyone around him is in danger if he stays in the same place. So he joins, and a bunch of his friends join this pair. The woman is sort of like a magician, and her knight or guardian, and they go off with these two on an adventure, and they meet a lot of different people and creatures, and they just go across the country and towards their faith. And I really enjoy the first 4 books. They're all ginormous, so it's not easy to get through them. I sort of planned to read one a month, but then I stopped, obviously, so I didn't do that. But eventually I would like to get back to them. Similarly, I would like to get back into the world of Robin Hobb. I have read the first year trilogy, and I never continued on with the rest of the books in the realm of the Elderlings, and I would like to do that. But first I would like to reread the first year trilogy so I can get back to Fitz and just relearn his story, I guess. There's definitely parts that I remember, but given that there are so many books in the series, I would like to, not be fuzzy on the details, basically. So Fitz is this bastard son of a prince, and he's not treated very well, but there's definitely a great story surrounding him, and I just enjoyed it so much. Again, I have a review of the first year trilogy up here, so if you want to go check it out. So those are some of the fantasy books. There's some more back on the list, but I would also like to read some books that take place in our world, and one of those is Under the Tuscan Sun by Frances Mace. I just adore that book. It's a story about renovating a villa in Tuscany. The author and her husband bought one, and we follow them as they stumble through the renovation, the whole process of buying a house and just finding a crew to actually renovate it, and then just discovering the countryside, just going through these small towns and enjoying the art and the architecture, and all the food description in this book is just, oh, you know, I would get hungry all the time. And there's descriptions of people, and you feel like you know them, and it's just so fantastic. And as I said, the renovation itself sounds so interesting, and we all know that's not a lot of fun to write about or read about or experience, but she makes it sound so wonderful, and I really just love that book. And yeah, there's also a movie out with the same name based off of this book. It's not as good, and it definitely doesn't stick to the story. So, you know, just be cautious. If you have seen the movie and you do not want to pick up the book, pick up the book. It's worth it. There's also a middle grade series that I would like to revisit, and that is the Mapmaker trilogy by S.C. Grow. Again, it's one of my favorite series, and I have a review of it. This is a story of a girl who lives in this world where this great catastrophe happened, and continents and parts of continents are in different time periods. So, you know, she lives in the 1800s, and there's part of the continent that it's in ancient times, and, you know, things like that. And it's really interesting and a lot of fun to read about. And traveling, it's slightly more difficult than it is in our world. And there's these map makers, which, you know, her uncle is one of them, and they're very important because they provide much needed maps. Anyways, and she lives with her uncle because her parents disappeared. They were travelers and explorers, and they disappeared years back, and now she's itching to find them, and especially given the political situation in her part of the world is not that great, and she basically decides to things happen, and she decides to go try to find them, and we follow her adventure. She's a great fun character. Oh well, I never mentioned what her name is, and I cannot remember, so I won't do that. But she's a great character, and she meets a bunch of other interesting characters. There's some. It's a very diverse cast, very interesting characters, as I said, and also the parts of the world she visits are very fun to read about. So I thoroughly recommend this series if you're into middle grade, or maybe even not. If you're just into fantasy, those are great as well. Then I would like to reread some young adult contemporary books. The first of those is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. Now this is a book that I've read years back, and I did enjoy it a lot. Since then, I've heard a lot of negative reviews about it for various reasons, and it's been a while since I read it, and just now I actually finished again by the Better by Christina Chio, and some elements did remind me of Anna and the French Kiss, so I feel that at some point I would like to reread it and see whether or not my opinion has changed about it. I'm definitely older than I was when I read it, and I want to see if those negative things bother me, or if I can just, you know, it's a book and enjoy it, basically. So that's one contemporary that I would like to read. There's also two books by Morgan Matson that I would like to revisit. The first one is Amy and Roger's Epic Detour. It's the first book that I read by her, and it's definitely one of my favorites. I loved her descriptions of the road trip. I loved the way she described the countryside. You could feel like you're there, and you would want to be there and just be on a road trip and have fun. It's definitely one of my favorites. And there's also A Second Chance Summer, which is a bit sadder and more serious, but I would also like to revisit that one. I also plan to reread Lethal White by Robert Galbraith at some point. I have re-listened to all the other three books in the series, but this one is the most recent one, and I hadn't had the opportunity yet to get to it again. It's definitely not my favorite in the series. It's a lot thicker than it needs to be, and yeah, the relationship between Robin and Cormoran definitely didn't go as I thought it was gonna go. Not that I really knew what to expect, because seriously, who knows? But it was a lot more complicated than I expected. And you know, when you watch other people's relationships, it's always easy to judge and to just say, why don't you do that, and things would be solved. But it's obviously not as easy if you're part of that relationship. And I think that's what's happening with Robin and Cormoran. They just don't see, I guess, how to solve it. I don't know, it's just weird right now. Anyways, so I would definitely like to get to that one. if not sooner, before the next book in the series comes out, and I have no clue when that is happening, so I think I have some time left to do that. I would also love to reread the N.K. Jemisin's the 5th season trilogy. The first time around, which was last year, I listened to the books, and I have to say that I did not enjoy them as much as I expected to, given the hype. And also, all 3 books received the Hugo Award, so I expected to love them, but I didn't. And I am sort of, I wanted to give the trilogy away already, but then I figured that what if it was just the format that didn't appeal to me? Because sometimes listening to a book actually sort of, doesn't make me like it. And I think that maybe if I've read them in a physical format, that I would enjoy them a lot more. So I will probably give them a try at some point and see whether or not I'm right about that. And yeah, another fantasy series that I plan to get to, and I think that I will get to this one sooner rather than later, is the Raven Shadows trilogy by Anthony Ryan. So this is, again, one of my favorite trilogies, and I already talked about each book individually in my reviews. It takes place in a world where this boy is brought to a convent by his father, and he's then trained as a sort of a monk, fighting monk, and after that he stumbles into a lot of adventures and war, and things are just happening. And I loved, especially the first book. I love the whole trilogy, but especially the first book. And now the author is coming up with more books about this character, and I would like to obviously reread the first ones so I can refresh my memory of them and just have fun. So I'm not sure when I'm going to do that, because the next book comes out, I think, that next month. So, I don't have a lot of time. And they're all big books, so we'll see how that goes. And the last books that I would like to reread are The Alienist and The Angel of Darkness by Caleb Carr. These are murder mysteries taking place in the 1800s. They're very atmospheric. I love the characters. We follow Laszlo Kreitzler. He's an alienist, so he's basically a psychologist or something like that, and he and his friends and some other people that are sort of connected loosely with him stumble into these murders, and they want to solve them, and it's just a great crew of characters that I love to read about. Actually, I listened to these books, and I would recommend audiobooks for these. The text is very dense, and I think it would take me forever to actually read them in a physical format, but listening to them was just great, and I loved it. So yeah, I also hope that the next book in the series comes out at some point, although I'm not sure that's happening anytime soon. But yeah, until then, at least I can re-listen or reread these two. But yeah, those are all the books that I have currently on my list to reread. Let me know down in the comments if you plan to reread books as well, and what those are. And until next time, thank you for watching this video, and see you. Bye!